Good morning, guys. Good morning, Blake. Good morning, Lily. Good morning, Nolan. Now, when you're walking in, make sure you put your backpacks in your cubby and they're not out on the floor. And you come and sit down at your desk because we have some important stuff we have to get to today. So make sure you're looking up at your agenda on the board and it says that you have to have a piece of paper out and a pencil. So I'm going to walk around and make sure that a piece of paper and pencil's out on your desk. And it also says make sure nothing else is on your desk, just a piece of paper and a pencil. So I'm going to walk around and make sure everybody has that on their desk. Okay, so now that everybody has the materials that we need to start off, I want to mention that I'm Miss Hunter and I'm going to be doing a lesson with you guys today. And now this lesson is going to be very useful because we're going to be talking about bridges, and I think we all have been on a bridge before. So we have used Mystery Science throughout the years, and we will be using it today again. So I want to remind you that we're going to start off with a video. And I expect you to not have anything out on your desk and that you're paying very close attention to what we're talking about in the videos because it's going to help you on the activities that we have to do today. So I'm going to go ahead and start the video.
Hey, it's Doug. Today I want to tell you a true story about a place right here in this picture and about a guy whose name was Charles Ellis. Charles built something right in this spot. And what he built is world famous. You'll see by the end of the mystery that you'll probably recognize it. For this story, we have to go back in time. We're going to go to the year 1929, almost a century ago. And here is Charles Ellis. Charles was an engineer. That's someone who uses science in order to build things. And Charles faced a challenge. You see, he had been called to help two cities on the west coast of North America. Between the two cities was this wide channel of water. The two cities often traded goods with each other, and some people even went between each city to work each day. But there was only one way to get across this stretch of water: by boat. It wasn't great. A boat ride took over 45 minutes to get from one side to the other. The people in the two cities wanted Charles to build a bridge across the big channel of water so that they could drive their cars and trucks from one city to the other. And they didn't want just any bridge. They wanted a bridge that would be beautiful, really nice looking, something the whole world would admire, something that could be famous. A lot of experts said a bridge couldn't be built there. They said the distance was too great. It was more than a mile across. They also thought that the water in the channel was too deep. And it was really deep. If you sucked out all the water in this spot, like that, you'd see it was almost 400 feet down to the bottom. And what's more, lots of huge ships needed to get through the channel of water. Big ships like cargo ships, cruise ships, navy ships. Any bridge that was going to be built couldn't have a lot of pillars or supports underneath it because those would block the passageway for huge ships like these. So how could a bridge meet all of these challenges? Today, just like Charles, you're going to design your own bridge. You'll compete for fun with some of your classmates to see who can make their bridge the strongest. Now, unlike Charles, you don't need to worry about your bridge being able to carry people or cars. You just have to worry about your bridge holding some pennies on it for weight. For this, you're going to make a bridge out of paper. But since you might not have thought much about designing bridges before, let me tell you a little bit more about the story of Charles Ellis, the engineer, so that you can learn something about designing bridges. Now, the first question any bridge designer might ask is, well, what's wrong with just a really long board? After all, that's the simplest kind of bridge. Like, imagine all we had to do were cross this little stream or creek. It's just wide enough that you probably don't want to jump. So you might lay down a board to walk across, like this one right here. But see, if this creek were even a little wider, like this one, you start running into problems with putting a board across, because the board now has to be longer in order to reach the other side. The longer a board, the more it weighs. And the more it weighs, the more it sags under its own weight, see? And now, if you add a weight on top of that, like a person walking, then the sagging downwards gets even worse. If you put too much weight on it, it might sag down into the water or even snap. So what could you do with a bridge like this? How could you keep it from sagging?
Alright, so now what I want you to do is look up at this discussion question and then ask us, how do we think we could keep that bridge from sagging? So, what I want you to do is get out your pencil and paper and think individually and quietly and write down a few answers on the sheet of paper on what you think you can do to keep that bridge from sagging. So take a few minutes and think about it, and then I want us to share out our ideas to the class. Alright, so let's see. Blair, what kind of things do you think we could use, or any ideas that you have to keep that bridge from sagging? Okay. Now, why did you choose that answer? Do you think it's because adding an arch underneath of it would help give it more support? Okay, yeah, I agree with that. I think if you have something underneath of it, it's going to hold up better. Now, let's see. Blake, what do you think we could do to keep that bridge from sagging? Okay, how did you come to that answer? You think putting, because of the video, maybe putting something underneath of it like we talked about, like Blair discussed? Okay. Well, I agree with that. We're going to have to continue on with the next video, and I think we'll learn a little bit more about that, and maybe it'll help with what we'll do today and how you can create and come up with some ideas on how to build your bridge. So let's go ahead and make sure everything's off your desk and make sure your eyes are on the video because it's going to help you. Alright, here we go.
You can see that this is the idea they used for this, the Lake Pontchartrain Bridge in Louisiana, USA. Where the bridge would have been sagging, they put these big pillars underneath to support it. The pillars are like the stick we put under our board. The weight of the road and any cars or trucks driving on it pushes down, so something is needed to push back up. Otherwise, the bridge will fail or break. So these pillars help push back up on the weight, keeping the bridge from sagging or breaking. Now, as long as you have lots of supporting pillars, it's possible to build a bridge as long as you want it to be. The Lake Pontchartrain Bridge is really long. It's one of the longest bridges in the world. Now, when you build a paper bridge, maybe you could try building pillars out of paper. But poor Charles can't just build a bridge with pillars all along it, because, as you recall, Charles has to deal with a really deep channel. Plus, he has to have space for really big ships to get through. So what options does Charles have? Well, thinking back to our board across a stream, suppose we had a situation where the bridge is going over something really deep, like this. You can't easily just put a stick or a pillar to support a bridge in the middle, because the middle is too far down. But you can put two pillars off to the sides, like this. Now you're supporting the middle of the bridge. Notice where the force of the weight is pushing? It's pushing off to the sides. This is what some bridge designers have chosen. Here, and here, and here. You can probably guess what this kind of bridge is called. It's an arch bridge. Arch bridges are a very popular design for bridges. Maybe you even have one near where you live. So, could Charles use an arch bridge design? This definitely would make a beautiful bridge, and it wouldn't have any pillars underneath, so that's great for his problems. But unfortunately, Charles can't use an arch bridge design because arch bridges can only be so long. If they're too long, the sides won't support the weight of the bridge. The longest arch bridge in the world, this one, is just over 550 feet across. Now remember, the gap of water Charles Ellis needs to cross here is over 5,000 feet. That's a mile across. So an arch bridge might be good for you to try out today with your design out of paper, but this wouldn't work for Charles Ellis. He needs a different design. There is a third design that's possible. Now, in the pillar bridge, remember, you're supporting the weight of the bridge by pillars that are pushing up on the bridge from below. And in the arch bridge, you're supporting the weight of the bridge by putting two pillars off to the sides, so pushing up on the bridge from the two sides beneath the bridge. But in both of these designs, notice they're pushing up on the bridges. What if you didn't have anything pushing up to support the bridge? Could the bridge pull down from something instead? Well, it can. This kind of bridge is called a suspension bridge. If you know the word suspenders, that's easy to remember. It's called that because the bridge suspends or hangs from these two towers up here. It's a pulling force. The road is here, and the weight of it, plus anything driving on it, is supported by these ropes made out of steel, which are attached up here to two towers on either side. This is the design that Charles Ellis chose to cross the channel of water. And when he did this, he created the most famous suspension bridge in the world. In fact, all this time, I haven't told you the names of the towns he was connecting. The city on one side is San Francisco, California, and the city on the other side is a town called Sausalito. Now, by now, you might be able to guess what the bridge is that Charles Ellis designed. It's this, the Golden Gate Bridge. The suspension bridge design solved all of Charles's problems. It was able to cross the wide gap of water, but without needing any pillars in the middle where the channel is so deep. That kept the channel free for large ships to come through. In order to make a suspension bridge, Charles and the construction crew had to construct two large towers to hang the bridge from. This is an actual photo when they were doing construction. Both of these towers were placed in the fairly shallow waters off to the side of the channel. Then they hung the bridge itself, the roadway, from the towers by making use of incredibly strong cables made out of steel. That's these. When it was completed in 1937, the Golden Gate Bridge was the longest suspension bridge in the world, and it still makes the top 10 list. But even if it's not the longest suspension bridge anymore, it's still the most famous, probably for its beautiful design and its striking dark orange color and the incredible views from almost anywhere near the bridge. People often ask, why is it called the Golden Gate Bridge? I mean, it's orange, not gold. Well, the channel of water underneath is called the Channel of the Golden Gate, so the bridge is named for the channel of water that it crosses, not because of its color. If I look through binoculars, I can even see this bridge from my neighborhood in San Francisco where I live. So that's the story of Charles Ellis, the engineer, and the bridge that he built, San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge. Now would be a good time to stop and think about the different kinds of bridge designs you've just seen, and what makes a bridge strong.
Now, I want to look at this discussion question. It says, do the bridges you've seen so far give you any ideas about how you can make a strong paper bridge? And it says to think about how you can support the bridge so it doesn't sag. So kind of what we talked about earlier. So does anybody have any ideas from the bridges like the suspension bridge, a pillar bridge, an arch bridge? Any ideas that we can use to make a strong paper bridge here later in our activities? Okay, let's see, Jessica. So you think maybe having like a pillar on one end and pillar on the other to help support it? Okay, I understand that. So let's see. So maybe if you have a pillar on one end and a pillar on the other, that kind of seems like it's like a balance, right? Like a balance force. Now, I don't know if you've heard of that before, but we'll get into it later. But that's kind of what it is. You have to have a balance on both sides so the bridge doesn't collapse or cave in. You want to have a support system, right? And that's what these videos are going to get talking about, that for bridges to stand, there has to be something underneath of them to stay supported. So now, let's go ahead and watch this last little video and make sure everything's off your desk, except that pencil and paper. You can keep that out. But make sure your eyes are paying attention because you're really going to need this information to help you out when you're building your own paper bridge. So let's go ahead and watch it.
Now there's actually one little extra thing you can do to make a bridge very strong. This is something you might want to know about before you go designing a paper bridge. If we go back to that very first example of the world's simplest bridge, this one, a simple board across a stream. Remember, we saw how if the board were very long, it would sag in the middle. And if you walked on it, it might even break or dip down into the water. But notice something here. If you take this board and now you turn it so that it's on its side, it's much stronger. If you were to walk on it now, it wouldn't sag. It can support a lot more weight. So if you take two boards on their sides like this, and then put a flat board on top for walking over, this bridge will be much stronger than that single flat board alone. So what's crazy is that this bridge doesn't even have to be turned this way. If you nailed this all together, so all three boards were connected, and then you turned them so it's facing upwards, it still has the same strength. The two boards that are pointing up make this bridge stiff. They keep it from sagging. This shape is really strong. In fact, you can see it in everyday life. With really large bridges like this, of course, they're not made of wood. This is made of steel, since steel's even stronger. But there's a drawback to that. Steel is also much heavier than wood. So bridge builders thought about how could they make a shape like this, but keep it light? And they realized it doesn't have to be one giant flat piece of steel all along the sides. You could just as well have steel beams or poles, and it would be just as strong, but a whole lot lighter. They call this type of bridge a truss bridge, from the French word for bundle, since it's like a bundle of beams or poles. But all it is just a lighter weight version of this, a design that makes a bridge stronger. If you look around, you can spot truss bridges everywhere, like this one, and here's a truss bridge, and here, and here, and here's another one. They're all over the place. Sometimes you can even find truss bridges within other bridge designs. Like, look at the Golden Gate Bridge. So that's a suspension bridge, right? But look at the roadway. The roadway under the Golden Gate Bridge, it's made of a truss. So you may want to use this knowledge when you think about how to make a strong paper bridge.
Okay, so now that we watched all the videos, I want us to go ahead and begin our activity. So I'm going to go around and place you guys in groups of 4. So here at table 1, I want Blake, Jessica, Blair, and Nolan. So I want you guys to be a group of 4. And then I'm going to go around the room and do that for everybody else. So now that you guys are grouped in groups of 4, I am going to hand you a materials bucket. Now, this bucket is a pretty big bucket. Has a bunch of materials in it. And I want you to put this in the middle of your table, away from your desk, and put it in all 4 desks on the middle of the table, and don't touch it until I tell you to. So I want to make sure that you guys are listening, because I'm about to play a video that explains the instructions. And then I'll go back over and explain the instructions, but you need to make sure you're not playing with the materials in the desk. Now in the video, it will bring up a bridge designer's guide. We're not going to use that, but we're going to use all the other materials that it talks about. So let's go ahead and watch the video, and it'll tell us what to do and what type of materials we'll use. Okay?
All right, it's time for you to be your own Charles Ellis. You and a partner are going to build a bridge. Now, the one thing you're limited by, the thing that's going to make this a challenge for you, isn't a wide, deep channel of water like the Golden Gate Bridge was designed to cross, but instead the materials that you're using, and a little bit of your time too. I mean, in terms of time, you've only got the rest of the class period to work. And for the materials, your bridge will use only paper. So you and a partner are going to work together, and it's your job to create a bridge between 2 stacks of books. The books should be about 6 inches apart, and your bridge must be at least 3 inches wide. And then here's what you should do. You'll test your bridge by stacking pennies on it. And you should stack pennies on it until the bridge fails, like this. Ready? Oh, it failed. Collapsing under the weight of all the pennies there. Now, I know that's kind of a weird idea. You want to make the bridge fail, but that's exactly right. You do. Because by making it fail, and then by watching how it fails, that's going to lead you to ideas for how to improve your bridge and make it stronger. So the bridge that holds the most pennies is going to be the winning design. For the bridge materials, you can only use paper, nothing else, not even tape. Now I know that might seem hard, but we're making it difficult on purpose. Because being creative, coming up with ways to solve problems, is kind of like a muscle. You have to exercise it in order for it to get strong. And so not having tape is going to make you have to exercise your creativity muscle. Think about all the things that you can do with paper. There's actually a lot you can do with it. You can fold it, you can roll it, you can twist it. Now, do any of these things make the paper stiffer or stronger? Think about that. Can any of these things help you do something you'd otherwise use tape for? Now, I should tell you, you will have scissors. You can make any cuts you want. So you can slice the paper up into smaller pieces if you like. And if you experiment, I'm sure you'll find a lot of different ways to build a bridge. You think about, how could you copy any of the designs you learned about? You can use as many pieces of paper as you like when you're experimenting, as long as your final bridge uses just 2 pieces of paper. Now, to do the job right, I recommend you make at least 3 different bridge designs to see which one works best. You'll draw your designs here on the worksheet. So to get started, you're going to need these things: a pencil, a bridge challenge handout, a bridge designer's notebook where you can keep track of what you do, and then you'll also want a ruler, a pair of scissors, 2 stacks of books, and of course paper. Oh, and I shouldn't forget, of course, you'll need pennies too. Now, how many pennies you need, that's going to depend on your bridge. I hope you'll need lots of pennies. So go ahead, follow the instructions on the bridge challenge handout, and when you're done building, your class can get together and talk about what you all did and which bridge held the most pennies. Good luck and have fun, everyone.
So now that you watched the video, I just want to make sure you understand what you're supposed to do. So everybody go ahead and get your materials bucket, and there should be all those materials. And in my model, I only have used 2 books, but you can use as many as you can to make it even. I put 6 books in the bins. Now, I want you to get out your bridge challenge sheet. There should be 1 sheet per group. And let's go over those directions real quick, and then I will let you guys get started. So, on the bridge challenge sheet, it tells you to place the stacks of books 6 inches apart. So if you look at mine, I tried to place it 6 inches apart, and I have the books, and then I set the paper down on top of the books, and it asks you to think about bridges that you've seen, and can you make something that has the same shape out of paper. So I just did the basic model with the 2 books on both ends and then the paper. And what you want to do is take your pennies, and you're going to want to take them out of the bag and place them on top of there, and you're going to want to test it out. Now that I have given you a model to look at, I want you to take that piece of paper and pencil that you used in the beginning, that when you answered about the discussion question, and I want you to individually think about a bridge that you can make to support the pennies. So go ahead and take 5 minutes and draw the sketch on the piece of paper individually what you think. And then after, I'll give you about, let's say, 5 more minutes to come up with a final sketch with your group, and then we'll get started on creating our own bridge. So go ahead and take 5 minutes. Make sure that you're thinking about bridges that you know of or that were discussed in the video to help you when you're drawing your sketch. So go ahead and think about it. So now that you've drew your sketch, I want you to get together with your group for 5 more minutes and draw a final sketch. Now this final sketch, you have to use an idea from each person. So Blake, Jessica, Blair, and Nolan, you each have to have 1 part from your bridge put in your final sketch of your bridge. Now this may cause a little bit of tension. If you don't want to do that idea, that's okay. Maybe use a different idea from somebody's. Every single person has to have a little bit from their individual sketch in the final sketch. So go ahead and take 5 more minutes. Alright, so the 5 minutes is up. I'm going to set an in-class timer of 15 minutes so you can make your bridge and set your pennies on top. And after the timer's over, I will go around and see how many pennies each group has to see who got the most pennies not to sag or collapse on the bridge. So let's set the timer. Here's the timer. So let's go ahead and start. And there you go. Go ahead and work. And I'm going to walk around if you have any questions. Alright, time's up. I'm going to walk around and look at everybody's bridges. Alright, so Blair, your guys' group bridge held up. Let's see, Joe's. Yours kind of looks like it's starting to fall. Let's see, what could we have done maybe to, does anybody know, to see what we could have done to help Joe's bridge over here? It looks like it's starting a little bit. Maybe we needed to crumble up a piece of paper and make it in the middle to help stabilize it. Okay. So now that we got to do our activity, I want you to go ahead, clean up all your materials, put the pennies back in the bag. And I'm going to wait for every single person to have all the materials out and in the middle of the desk. Okay, so it looks like everybody cleaned up their workspace. And now I want to take a little bit of guided notes to help us better understand the process about bridges and what we just did. So I'm going to pass out to you a guided note sheet, and I'm going to have a PowerPoint. So there's some fill in the blanks here that I want you to fill in. So I'm going to go through and start at slide 1 and make sure you're following along with me so that way you can understand what's being talked about here. So let's see. All right. Okay. Forces and balance forces. Force. So a force is a push or a pull. Sometimes forces can cause objects to move, and sometimes forces slow, stop, or change the direction of an object's motion. A balance force is when two forces act in opposite direction on an object and are equal in size. A balance force does not cause a change in motion. So there's 3 blanks that you should have filled in. That a force is a push or a what? A pull. Good job. And then a balance force does not cause a change in motion. So let's think of a game of tug of war. If the people on each side of the rope are pulling with the same strength, but in the opposite direction, so you got people on this side and people on this side, and they're pulling in the opposite direction, the forces are going to be balanced as long as it's the same amount of people on both sides. That results in no motion. It's not going to move because the forces are balanced. So let's look at this next one. What is an unbalanced force then? An unbalanced force is 2 forces acting on an object that are not equal in size. Unbalanced forces can cause an object to change its motion. So that makes sense if you, again, think of the game of tug of war. If you have 4 men on one side and 3 men on the other and they go in opposite directions, who do you think is going to win? The 4 men are going to win because there's more, right? And it's unbalanced. So now, has anyone heard of gravity before? Or maybe thought about gravity with space or have heard of it? Okay, maybe a few people. So look at your guided notes. Gravity is a force that pulls objects down. Think of a ball. So when you hold a ball up in the air and you drop it, what happens? Does anybody know? Let's see. Mark. Yeah, the ball, like if you have a basketball, it falls to the ground. So watch my pen. It'll fall to the ground. So what is that? Why does it fall to the ground? Well, it falls to the ground because gravity is pulling it down to the ground. So gravity is very important to our everyday lives. Without Earth's gravity, we would fly right off of it. Because imagine, if we didn't have something pulling us down, I wouldn't be able to sit right here in this chair. So we require gravity in order to live. And on this last side, there's a few force examples. So the first one shows a balance force. The one over here in the corner, that shows gravity in an apple falling off a tree to the ground. And then the last one on the bottom is an unbalanced force. And that's kind of showing about the tug of war with the 4 men on one side and the 3 men on the other. So there's some examples to keep in your mind. And remember, forces are the same way on bridges. So you have to have 2 things on both sides, two forces on both sides in order for the bridge to stay and not collapse. If you have a smaller force and a bigger force, it's going to collapse because it's not equal. So now that we have discussed our notes, I want to do a little bit more, and I want to start by watching a video of a bridge that is unbalanced. And this is a real life suspension bridge, and the video will show it collapsing. So let's go ahead and watch the video.
Tacoma Bridge, Washington, opened only a few months ago, was built at a cost of over $6 million. But misfortune overtakes the great structure. These are some of the most amazing pictures ever recorded by a newsreel. The actual collapse of the world's 3rd largest suspension bridge. Only a 35-mile-an-hour wind is blowing, but this apparently sets up a rhythmic swinging of the bridge, which increases with each swing. Finally, the swinging road and the suspension cables give way and plunge into the water below. Fortunately, the only casualties were a car stalled on the bridge and a dog.
Wasn't that crazy seeing a real life suspension bridge just collapsing like that because the forces were unbalanced? See how important it is to have balanced forces on each side and how gravity would pull it down if it was unbalanced. Now, I don't know if many of you know this, but I'm from Northern Kentucky, and in Northern Kentucky, specifically Covington, there is a suspension bridge that crosses the Ohio River, and I'll show you a picture of it. That is called the Roebling Suspension Bridge. And isn't that cool that we have a real life connection in Kentucky of a suspension bridge? So now that we've talked about the different bridges and we've had guided notes and we made our own paper bridge, I want to do a little activity just to get our minds thinking and expanding on our knowledge that we just learned about forces. So, for our final little activity, I need 2 volunteers. So let's have Blake and Joe. Now, I need you guys to come up here to the front of the classroom, and I need you to form an arch bridge by placing your palms together and leaning forward towards each other, sliding your feet back as far as you can. So I want to caution you, do not lose your balance. This takes very big safety precautions because you don't want to fall. So make the arch and put your feet back as far as you can. Now I need 1 more volunteer. Who wants to volunteer to come do this for me? Okay, Blair, you come up here. Okay, so I want you to gently pull down the top of the arch to test its strength. So the arch came down, right? So was that fairly easy to do? It wasn't very hard to just break that arch, right? So let's test this. If we add 2 more volunteers, so let's do Caroline and Cody. So Caroline and Cody, what I need you to do is I want you to come up to the other volunteers and sit behind the students where their feet are to make the arch more stable and their legs more stable. So now that we have the 2 arch makers and the 2 people behind them helping support their legs, I want Blair, you to come back up here and try to break that arch down. Alright, Blair, that was much harder, right, to break that arch down? See how the students, the balance of the outward force created the pressing down much harder because you had the 2 outward forces balancing it more, so it was a lot harder to break it down. Good job, guys. You can go have a seat. So now that we've learned about everything, I want you guys to put up your notes and put everything away in your desk. Now I'm going to hand you the exit slip once everybody has the stuff put away. Okay, I don't see anything else out on the desk. So what I want you to do is take this exit slip, and it'll be measured by a rubric. So don't worry, there's a rubric. I can put it up on the board for you to see. So let's read the directions. It says, using the evidence from the paper bridge you made, describe the effect of balanced and unbalanced forces when the pennies were placed on top of your bridge. If the bridge did not hold up, what caused it to fail? If your bridge held up, what made it a success? Make sure to support your answer with reasoning on the lines below. So take about 10 minutes and fill this out, and make sure you use the evidence from the bridge you made and talk about whether your bridge was balanced or unbalanced, what the effects were. Make sure you go back and read. And it says make sure to support your answer with reasoning on the lines below. So once everybody has their exit slip, go ahead and get started. You will have till the end of the class to finish this. And thank you guys for doing this activity for me. I hope you had fun.